Hello again, everyone. I'm glad you're listening to my lesson here. As you know, for some time I have been investigating God, and here is another lesson that shows exactly why I am doing this. Because the teachings just don't answer the questions about life that we were told that they would answer. Jesus is the answer, but many of our questions never got answered about life and pain and suffering and the origin of man. Then I came over into the Torah world and heard all kinds of fancy answers there. But then after a while, I realized they were just fancy answers to things in the Torah. But when you go outside of the Torah, the answers sometimes do, but do not always make sense. I'm going to show you again today what I just figured out that made me say, here's another indication to me that the Torah is not of quote-unquote God, meaning the God of the Hebrews. So that would then make the God of the Hebrews a liar, because if it doesn't make sense and it's not true in our world, then that means the God of the children of Israel in the scriptures, he is lying, and that's against scripture. So if he is lying, since it is not possible for the Torah God to lie, that must then mean he actually does not exist, and it's a man who wrote the book of the Torah that's actually lying to us. My lesson is titled, The Sun Exposes the Man-Made Torah. I will read from Genesis chapter 1, verse 14 to 18. It says, "And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven, to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, and for days and for years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven, to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. And he made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good." Now listen to my thoughts. In Barrow, Alaska, we're told that is a city that is at the farthest most point in North America as a city, and also the farthest most city from like South America, right? Like going to the other extreme end. This is the farthest point, Barrow, Alaska. Surprisingly, if you go online and check it out, there are people living there as if it's just another place to live. I don't know why people would live there, but people seem to live in a place if it's very hot or if it's very cold, like, so they can handle it, I guess. Now, if you look there, they'll tell you that they've got like 65 days of sunlight. So the sun is just there, like it just stays there, stays there, stays there. And they've got like no night. Now somebody's going to get clever with the whole thing and say, well, you just go by your clock, your watch, or your calendar. But let me just point out here that we made calendars and clocks. So keeping of time the way that we do it, as I'm understanding these days, is something that is really man-made. The measuring of time, it's man-made. But as they say, time in the way that we use it to wake up at a certain time and to go to work at a certain time and so on, and you have your alarm going off and so on, that's all a man-made concept, time as viewed like that. But it seems to me that nature uses cycles and rhythms, and you can probably say waves. That's how nature does its stuff. So time, the way that we have it and use it and measure it, is just something that we did. But nature doesn't go by our way to measure time and to interface with how we measure time. We measure time the way we do in order to interface with what nature does to do its own operations. That being said, the Torah itself says that he made these lights to rule over the day and over the night. And I remember I did a lesson this long time ago when dealing with the Sabbath, and I've learned some more since then, now that I'm pulling out of the Torah mindset. I'll use the Torah like I'll use any other book or body of teachings where it makes sense. But there's no one book that was given to us as the manual of life. I used to think the Torah or the Bible was the manual of life. That's not true. There are lots of holy books on earth that have a lot of wise sayings in it. If the Torah is from God, then God needs to prove it, and he's not doing that. So we are left to struggle with it. But some people will curse out others simply because you are teaching something different from what they believe in their holy book, in this case the Torah. Well, I still have to share it, because you just need to be free in your mind to look at it your own self. Until you are free in your mind to investigate for yourself, you will only look at it from the way that they teach you to look at it. So he made it two great lights. So you got like the sun to rule over the day, according to light, and the moon to rule over the night, according to its light as well, which usually will appear as less light, so that you have a lot more darkness that you're experiencing. In this place in Alaska, and this is a very big place as well, like you can fit a few states there. So we're talking a very, very big place, and apparently people have lived there for thousands of years as well. But I got to thinking, if you are keeping the feasts of the Most High in Barrow, Alaska, or keeping the Sabbath there, then when should someone else in Jerusalem or in other parts of America or other parts of the world keep the same feast or the same Sabbath? Because Israel should be keeping the Sabbath together, for example, or the feast together. That's why it said they should come together to keep the feast of the Lord. If they don't go up to Jerusalem at a certain time, at a certain point in time. So Israelites would watch like the moon or the sun, however they do it, to figure out the timing to go there, because there is a right time. Well, if there is a right time, it immediately lets me know that there is also a wrong time. So if you say today is the Sabbath starts now, or if you say today is the feast starts now, but someone in Alaska having like a 65-day, for want of a better way of putting it, long day, a 65-day long day, of course, a 65 days would be according to the days that you normally experience right here, who are not living in that part of Alaska. Then 65 of your days, let's say there's 65 days, the 65-day stretch of perpetual sunlight, with the sun shining on them not going away, so that night never comes until 65 days later, to measure it with our day and night system, who don't live in Alaska. That means, and to make it a little bit easier, because it's going to get a little complicated if I keep talking certain ways, so let's just go with the regular Gregorian calendar of January 1, starting the year. So let's take out the 31 days and the 28 days sometimes, just to make it very simple to talk and think through. Let's just give every month 30 days. So let's say January 1 the year starts, and so you're going to go January and February. We'll call February 30 days as well. And so now you're going into March. Let's say March 5th will give you 65 days. So January 30, February 30, and 5 more days in March. So 65 days. But let's say you've got your first Sabbath on January 1, and then your other Sabbath on like January 8, and so on, and you count it up like that. Then by the time you clear January and get into February, you're now going into more Sabbaths. So by the time you get into like the middle of February, the second month, you're now like into your 5th or 6th Sabbath, if you're measuring by the sun, your 5th or 6th Sabbath of the year. So let's say you're in your 6th Sabbath in the middle of February. Another Hebrew Israelite who loves God and heard that he's an Israelite, that his ancestors came off slave ships and so on, and he returns to the law of the Lord. He is in his 6th Sabbath in the year. He's guaranteed to see Jerusalem eventually when the Most High restores the Church of Israel. This man is going to be blessed. He's going to have his own vineyard and everything. He's blessing his children, whatever. He's going to just get the blessing of the Lord when Ezekiel 37 resurrects us all. Now, for the Israelite who happens to be living in Barrow, Alaska, who by the time he gets to what you are experiencing as the 2nd Sabbath or 6th week of the year, in the middle of February, he is still in his 1st Sabbath, because if the Sabbath started on day 1 of the year, on January 1st, that means that by the time he gets to your 6th Sabbath, you would have gone through 42 days of the year to get to your 6th week or your 6th Sabbath. But he's still in the 1st week of the year, because remember I told you that if the Torah that you both believe in New York, let's say, or in Canada or in the islands like in Jamaica and so on, which is the same Torah that he should be believing in Jerusalem, who lives in Jerusalem, which should be the same Torah that the guy in Barrow, Alaska is believing in. It's all the same Torah. And we know when you look at biblical inerrancy and has the Torah changed and been corrupted and so on, the rabbis of Judaism will tell you the many copies of Torah have spread all over the earth, but it's always the same copy. It is never wrong. But here now we deal with a situation where the Torah person, whether they're just a regular Jewish person or rabbi or a Hebrew Israelite in Barrow, Alaska, they are now in their 1st week and their 1st day, their 1st Torah day in Barrow, Alaska, when you are in your 6th week of the year or your 42nd day of the year, which is your 6th Sabbath, somewhere around there. So you've now gone through 6 Sabbaths. This person, if the Sabbath was on day 1 of the year in Alaska, is now still in their 1st Sabbath, while you, with the same Torah, is keeping your 6th Sabbath, because the days there, they say, are so long, like they've got like a 65-day period where the sun stays. So according to the Torah teaching, which is correct because it is the Torah of the Lord, it is saying that the day is governed by the sun. And many Torah teachers teach that the sun gives light which rules over the day or tells you when the day starts. So when the sun comes in that is the start of day in a Torah view, although not everybody does it, but it seems to me that most people that I've looked into believe it that way to make more sense. And then when the sun goes away and the moon kicks in to be more dominant in the sky, then that is night, which is gonna be giving you significant darkness. So the period where the sun seems more active or more dominant in the sky is day. So now, the wisdom of the Torah that came from the Creator, who is Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, teaches us that the sun being dominant, or like the Torah says, ruling in the sky, is telling you when day is. That's why when the moon becomes more dominant, you say it's night, I'm going to bed. Because it's no longer sun time, because the sun isn't dominant there in the sky where you're at. So you say, well, it's the moon now, so it's night. So if they have a 65-day sun, which itself even sounds incorrect, but you understand what I'm trying to say, then that means that in Barrow, Alaska, when you are in day 42 with your 6th Sabbath of the year, they are still in day 1, which lasts so long that to you, you would measure it as 42 days or 6 weeks. But they're still in day 1, which lasts to them 65 days of your time. So if Earth really doesn't use your calendar that you made, and you got like even 10,000 year calendars from ancient Africans, and the Earth doesn't read your wristwatch because there was no wristwatch initially, but the Earth uses its rhythms and cycles. So the cycle of the sun moving in Alaska, in keeping with the Torah, is giving them day. As long as the sun has not receded, has not gone away, has not disappeared behind the horizon, as long as the sun continues with them, they are having day. I'm going to spice this up for you. Now, look here with the story of Joshua in Joshua chapter 10. With the whole Joshua telling the sun to stand still. I'm not going to, of course, read the whole story. But we'll just jump into it at verse, remember this is Joshua chapter 10. Okay, I'll jump into it at verse 12 and I'll read probably 2 or 3 verses. It says, Then spake Joshua to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. So one wonders by the time I get through this if the Lord really did deliver the Amorites before the children of Israel, or if this is just a story. Because somehow the story is seeming to me to be as fake as the New Testament. But he said, In the sight of Israel, Sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou, moon, in the valley of Ajalon. So the moon was someplace else in a valley, not being dominant. So it was like it's hiding in a valley. So it is not ruling over the day because it is not where the sun is, because the sun is at a point where the people can say that the sun is ruling in the sky, like Genesis chapter 1 verse 14 to 18 told us. So the sun is ruling. So when they see the sun not being in the valley, but rather the moon is there in the valley, they look at the sun above them and they say the sun is ruling, it is day. So he wants day to continue, whether you use 12-hour day or 24-hour day, it don't matter, but maybe I more kind of think of a 12-hour day because that's when you get most sunlight, but that is not even correct, I'm seeing now. But I will use a 24-hour period, just like I use the Gregorian January 1. I'll use a 24-hour period here in this conversation, in this lesson, to make things easier, simpler to think through. because I'll mention the 24-hour calculation later. So as long as they see the sun, they say it is day. Now he wants the day to extend and be longer, which means that he's not going by the calendar that an Israelite made or that we have today, made by Africans or whoever else made calendars on earth. He is going by what I said earlier, the rhythm or the wave or the cycles in nature. So if the sun is going to be made to stand still, he's not looking at his clock saying, there's no way to save this day because we only got like a couple more hours left, so we're stuck, we're done for. He is trying to command the natural rhythm or cycle that the sun goes by. Because in order to get what he wants for a longer day, he must do something to the rhythm that the sun is going by. The cycle that is going by. He must stay the cycle, do something to the cycle, so that the cycle is delayed and stays longer. So he says, sun, stand thou still. Then verse 13 says, and the sun stood still, and the moon stayed until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven. That means it's ruling like Genesis chapter 1 said. So it is dominant, not the moon. So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven and hasted not to go down about a whole day. Now this can get complicated. Even I can't handle all of this. So I'm just going to talk about the part I'm able to talk about. But this part about a whole day, I'd want to look into that some more because that part looks more complicated. But at least it seems to be communicating to me that if it hasted not to go down about a whole day, that doesn't seem to be showing any miracle. Because if the sun does not go down about the space of a whole day, isn't that normal? So are we being tricked? Because the sun should last a whole day. Just like the moon being dominant in a regular night should last the space of a regular night. So is there a miracle here if the sun is just lasting about a whole day? Because remember, you can say about because they don't measure it with the cycles of a cesium atom or whatever they use to measure the seconds of the day. They don't go by regular like 1 second, 2 second, 3 second like we measure on our digital wristwatch or our clocks. So about, because when the sun is working, some days will seem shorter than others and nights seem longer than others because, like I said, nature goes by rhythms and waves and cycles. So sometimes a rhythm or cycle will last shorter or longer depending on whatever is going on in nature. So you can't always say every day is going to have 12 hours or every day is going to have 9 hours or something like that. It's just whatever is going on that day. But generally, the days seem to have a similar amount of time. And let's say like in winter, it seems like the sun starts to become less dominant earlier so that, the place starts to get darker sooner. So it's just rhythm in nature. So anyway, another way to look at that, saying that it hasted not to go down about a whole day, could possibly be, but I don't know, because none of us know a lot of stuff. We're just all guessing, because nobody heard from God or Yahweh or the Creator. So we're all guessing from ancient times, ancient Africans until now. We're just guessing. But some use knowledge to trick people. But we are happy for the things that seem true to us, of course. But another way might be that there is a certain part of the day already lived, and already expired up to the point where he started to pray this prayer. And then if it's going not down for about a whole day, that means an additional measuring of about a whole day is added onto the amount of the day that had already gone up to the point where he began to pray this prayer and get this answer from God, this miracle from God. So it would then seem that it lasted longer than a regular day. Now, if that is the case, which we usually suspect that it is, then that means that the day lasting longer based on the sun not going away but staying in the sky where it is visible to the person keeping the Torah understanding of the sun ruling in the sky, that designates what a day is. Then if the Israelite happens to move to Barrow, Alaska, and the sun stays up in the sky for even longer than Joshua's day, when he got a miracle from God, then the Israelite in Barrow, Alaska, has a natural, normal, year-to-year miracle of a 65 longer than normal New York day, for example. So Joshua prayed for his miracle day, but you still have to call it in the Torah world a day. It might be longer than your 12-hour day or longer than your normal 24-hour day if that's how you measure it. But no matter how long the day lasted for Joshua and the Israelites back then, it still has to be called a day. No Israelite can look at it and say, this ain't right. This is not a day. This is day and night. If it moves into the time period where you would normally see the moon coming, but Joshua wanted to delay the moon from being dominant and operating the way it normally would, so Joshua leaves the moon hovering probably closer to the earth, maybe, in a valley that looks kind of freaky to see the moon hovering there like that. Whether it's lower down to the earth or not, I don't know. You all know that stuff better than I. But no Israelite is going to challenge him and say this is not happening, because the Torah is telling you that they basically accepted it because they went on to get their victory. They weren't cursing God like, God, Yahweh, you're messing up the day. I'm going to get sick. It's going to throw off stuff. They all accepted it. And notice that the enemies that they were fighting were not complaining either. It's like they all accepted it and just continued fighting, because it's like they're seeing the God of Israel work a miracle. They don't have time to stop and fuss and complain, or they're going to get killed. They just got to fight, but they eventually got destroyed anyway. So nobody in the text is complaining that this did not happen, is what I'm trying to say. Everybody seems to accept, because I would imagine that if the enemy, like the Amorites, are complaining that something is wrong, why didn't the scribe say to prove the miracle of God that the Amorites were complaining over it, but that the children of Israel were praising their God for the miracle, to kind of show that the Israelites responded in a way by praising Yahweh some more. They responded in that way to cover over the complaint of the Amorites. So basically, neither party did anything to show that this longer day was not happening in the text, is what I'm trying to say. So, no matter how long the day continued, it was still called a day. They didn't say 9 p.m. came on and then Joshua said, well, let's stop fighting because I know the sun is still up, but technically it's 9 p.m. right now, so we got to stop fighting because it really is night even though it's bright. So if for 65 days, Barrow, Alaska has the sun shining on people there, is it still day? It's one day that lasts 65 days. So when you are in your 6th Sabbath or your 42nd day of the year in the middle of February, then the Israelite has not kept all those 6 Sabbaths who lives in Barrow, Alaska, instead of keeping his many Sabbaths for the year, so far he's only keeping one. This is a disobedient Israelite. But maybe he's not disobedient because he's keeping the Sabbath. He only got one so far. Now, when you have to keep the feast of the Lord and another feast came up and another feast came up in that time, and that Israelite is still in day one, so he doesn't get no second and third feast, that means that all Israelites who would live in Barrow, Alaska, are not keeping the feasts of the Lord. Nobody get technical telling me, well, all the feasts aren't going to be at the start of the year. You understand the point I'm making? Is that when they get the other 65-day night, or however long their nights last, because after the 65-day, then they go into other strange phenomena for the rest of the year as well, and they get long winters and so on, like no sun and whatever. Although sometimes, of course, even in the winter, because it's like winter there all the time, pretty much, the sun is still shining hot, non-stop. But what I'm trying to say is that as they go through the year, they are going to get some long nights, so when the next day does not come for 65 days because they got a 65-day night, although that sounds kind of weird to say it like that, but you understand what I'm trying to say. Then in their 65-day period of night, that means that while you are keeping the other feasts of the Lord in the rest of the year, those Israelites are not coming before the Lord to do that. Their year does not allow them to have all the feasts of the Lord, so they will never ever be able to keep that right there. Now, if you're telling me they're supposed to come to Alaska, that's another problem. Sorry, to come to Jerusalem. Because even the Torah curses, an instruction is saying you should keep even the Sabbath. Never forget it. Remember to keep the Sabbath day holy. And we're taught that we should remember it even in captivity. So, no matter where you are on earth, you should be keeping the Sabbath and keeping these holy day feasts. Although you say because of captivity you can't do the feasts, even though some ignore that. But the point is, Israelites are not always going to be able to leave Barrow, Alaska, and other strange places on earth that does this kind of stuff, because this is not the only place on earth that does that. You will always have unholy Israelites that are not set apart before the Lord because they do not keep all the Sabbaths and all the feasts of the Lord that other Israelites are. So there is an imbalance among the church of Israel, who should be one nation with one God, with one Torah, who have to keep Torah in many different ways. Because the Torah is not able to walk straight through all of this mess. The Lord knows that Israelites must keep the Sabbath together and must keep the feast together. But He made an earth where the sun will stay sitting in one area for 65 days so that the people cannot move on to celebrating the Sabbath elsewhere. And you say, well, they'll just look on their calendar and they'll just say, yeah, and they're on the phone call, they're calling you in New York and you're keeping the Sabbath now, so they'll go ahead and go to Sabbath meeting there in Alaska as well. But they're still in their first Sabbath. So you see the problem, the difficulty that it creates? And now you've got special expert teachers out there, because the Torah is taught in a way where they work things out, just like the other religions do with their holy books. So you'll just get a smart teacher that will just work through all this and say he doesn't know what he's talking about. This is the explanation. But you know that after all the lessons that I've been teaching lately, that there must be something wrong with the Torah based on even one of these lessons I'm teaching. Some way, somehow. If it's not this lesson, then one of the lessons exposing the Torah must be right, and you only need one problem, one error with the Torah to show it is not of the Most High. You know, I gotta be right somewhere. So for 2.5 months in Barrow, Alaska, the Israelite would keep only one Sabbath. So he's ignoring all the other Sabbaths of the Lord. When you get your new moon day, he doesn't even keep that until later on, until 2.5 to 3 months later. Because or however long, because he's still in his first day. For 65 days, he hasn't gotten to 30 days yet, or 29 days yet, to be watching no moon or whatever, to keep new moon day when you are keeping it. And if you don't keep those days, these special days, holy days of the Lord based on the Torah, you are a wicked Israelite. Because that's what I understood when I left the Christian church and came to the Israelite teaching. They told me you're a wicked Israelite for this, you're a wicked Israelite. If a pin drops, you're a wicked Israelite. Even my New Testament is fake news. They told me I'm a wicked Israelite because I'm teaching that. So is this Israelite in Alaska, in this place, not a wicked Israelite as well? How will they ever please the Most High and be saved? They're guaranteed for hell. So you can only please God if you live in certain places on earth. Why would God make a place like that? The better question is, why would a man make a Torah like this that cannot be true everywhere on earth? That's the question you need to think about. So now, there are 30 days in a month according to the book of Jubilees, I guess. I don't read it, but that's what I hear. And I guess the Torah. But these people have a 65-day period when the sun rules a day. So if you go by 24-hour days, then 65 days, giving them one day, is 1,560 hours. You say your day has 12 hours if you go by that, or 24 hours if you say it's from evening to the next evening. You say that's one day. But these people have 65 days. It's not a month for them just because of 65 days. That's only one single day. So if you say now with their fake Mars and fake other planets, oh, a day on this or that planet is such and such, or a month is this long, or a year is this long on this fake planet that we make, and we show you pictures of it when you go online and you look at these pictures or you buy these space books. So they're telling you that in these fake planets, which are just out of ancient mythology from ancient Africans and ancient India to worship gods and in their religious system of the ancients. But they're basically telling you that these other planets, their days are longer or shorter and so on. So basically, wherever you are, the understanding on earth is that your time will change wherever you are in the so-called galaxy or universe. So why don't you accept that if you are in Barrow, Alaska, or one of the other places that I'm not going to bother mention here, look them up, that your time will change as well. Now, if your time is changing, you got to worship Yahweh according to your time, because time is how you worship God with your feasts in the Torah. You know, it's like they tell me that Solomon sent ships to America, and they got this whole shipping port in Zion Geber, and he went to Brazil, him or David, to get gold in Brazil and in America and so on. And the trip was so long, I think they said, people bounce around the times, but I think they said something like the journey would last 6 months one way with the ship, and they'd stay there a year because the journey was so long and dig up and mine all the gold and so on, and then 6 months back. So they're gone like probably 2 to 3 years. You know, at least 2 years they're gone. And since they got to keep the feast in Jerusalem, you know, all those Israelites trying to get rich and powerful with the blessing of the Lord that took them out of Egypt to give them blessings. And he told David, look, if you needed more shields and more horses and so on, I would have given them to you. You didn't have to go and rape the woman and kill the man and so on. So these Israelites have blessings, but their kings are going so far away, knowing that while they're there, they cannot be in Jerusalem to come to the feast of the Lord. Look, I dealt with that long time ago on Twitter. I'm not going to bother get into that one. Let me move on. Basically, I'm trying to tell you that the Torah is man-made. You cannot keep the feast of the Lord and have togetherness as one nation if you are living on certain parts of the earth. It just doesn't happen. It's also the case that a day is not uniform across earth. Like the Torah conditioning made us think from we were children. You see that? And what about the other parts of earth that we do not know of yet? Like they're saying beyond the North Pole, going beyond what do they call the Antarctic ice wall, and then they're saying Admiral Byrd found new land, and now they've got government regulations where army ships are there, and you cannot, as a regular civilian, go there and look because they don't want you to see the truth of what's there. But reportedly, there are other lands there and so on that's even as big as America, and there's water and land and so on and whatever. So what if the time comes when we're all going into those areas? Or what if ancient people are trapped over in that side of the earth? Because from what I'm looking into and reading up and so on, it seems that that is true, that there really is this extra land with many other lands and many other oceans. Right? So what kind of experience will we have there with how the sun functions over there? How are you going to keep the Torah of the Lord and it's still earth? And how will you all come to Jerusalem when it's so far to travel from, if you're beyond the Antarctica ice wall? This gets very messy for the Torah. Basically, the Torah, as written by man, is not for all of earth. It would need to be adjusted. Just like some people saying the Torah needs to be rewritten or updated. Right? I heard even Tupac say that a long time ago, and that man lived and died arguing with the Bible that it needs to be updated now. I remember Tupac said Moses crossed the Red Sea, and whatever else he was saying, and that's so long ago, basically he's saying we need a new miracle or interaction from God now, and it can't happen. It's because the Torah is fake. It's fake, and the longer time goes on is the more we're finding out, and people are becoming more disillusioned. People are losing faith in God now. People are questioning even the very Torah that seems so powerful all along. So the Torah, as written by man, is not for all the earth the way it is, and needs to be adjusted. Right? So the word of God must change to fit the other parts of the earth. Even though the book of Malachi, chapter 3 and verse 6 says, "For I am the Lord, I change not. Therefore ye sons of Jacob are not consumed." So if he does not change, his Torah should not change. Yet the humans on earth, who the Torah is supposedly written for, are crying out for change. So the proof is in the pudding. In the real world, at ground zero on earth, where the Torah was supposedly written for, when you are on ground zero living on earth and going through all these things, people on earth at ground zero are saying the Torah needs to be updated, it needs to be rewritten. If the book isn't working, people cry out to say it needs to be rewritten. It needs to be updated. How wise is God, the God of the Hebrews, when he gives a book that supposedly is eternal, because the oral Torah was used to create the world, so it was before the earth, but he makes an earth where the Torah is limited, till people are crying out saying, we need a new book. A man can identify that the book is insufficient, it needs to be upgraded and so on. And the reason it don't change is because God is running it, and he says, no, I'm not going to change it. Why? Because I'm the Lord, I change not. That's why we're not getting a new book. Because he doesn't change, he's going to stay with the same old antiquated religious thoughts and teachings. So you're not going to get no new book. that then tells me that it's man who made it. Man. Because if the book is coming into question, and there's a battle in your mind about the book needing to be changed and God not changing it, that's not the work of God, people. The Torah was written by man. That's what I'm trying to tell you. The sun, with its movements on earth, exposes the man-made Torah.